Joining me today, I've got Todd and Carolyn Petkau, and you guys pastors at Riverwood Church in Winnipeg. But I guess when you're free, you're writing this book. It's called The Relationship Rocket Formula, and you guys just released it, so it's kind of hot off the press. And maybe we'll start with you, Carolyn. What is the Relationship Rocket Formula? What's it all about?
Well, it's all about marriage and about a formula for marriage. And the formula we've broken down to STP, meaning selfless, truthful, and passionate. And we believe that if a couple can really build selflessness, truthfulness, and passion into their marriage will thrive.
And Todd, where did the idea come from to write a book in the first place? Because, you're a pastor, so you're obviously very busy, but deciding to write a book, like where did that idea come from?
I mean, the idea probably came 10 or 15 years ago. And then I had someone in my life say to me, you know what, you should really write a book. Again, I tried and nothing came. And just about 2 years ago, kind of had the courage to begin typing, and it just started pouring out of me. And I felt like God was really calling me to be part of writing this book. And I brought Carolyn along on the journey, and we went for it.
And where did the rocket concept kind of come from? Because that's what it's called. So where did that come from?
Yeah. Well, you know what? Maybe I'll answer that. When you look at rockets are amazing. They're powerful. They're highly complex. They can be explosive. They were never meant to stay on a launch pad. They're going off on exploration. Every one of them is a prototype. You're never sure how it's going to quite turn out. And it just became the perfect metaphor for marriage. Marriage is all of those things. And I think, we would probably say that this book, it is a marriage book. It's intended for couples. But guys are probably going to enjoy it a little more than maybe some other marriage books, because it's got a lot of guy stories and a lot of rocket stuff in it.
And what makes this book different from other Christian marriage books, Carolyn?
There's so many good Christian marriage books out there, and we've really benefited from many of them. But we feel like this book, it has a lot of stories. Every chapter starts with a story. And I think the stories help to really draw people in. They're stories that are about our own marriage, but also just sometimes world-type news stories. But they're all very, very relatable. And at the end of each chapter are also questions for couples to ask each other, to dive a little bit deeper into that particular area of their marriage.
And how did, like you said, your own kind of life experience kind of play into the writing of this book? Because you've probably gone through ups and downs like we all have, and you're like, okay, I want to encourage the readers so they can maybe avoid mistakes, or they can do things that we've seen work.
Right. Yeah, we've been married 39 years, and boy, we've got some stories of some great successes and some incredible failures, right? And just in terms of how we related to one another. And we tell those stories, and we try to be really vulnerable and really truthful, because we think other marriages can identify with that stuff. In fact, the opening story is about not one of the greatest moments in our marriage, but it's a bit gripping, and it also just says, you know what, we've been there. We understand that it's tough, but there's hope, and there's a tremendous journey ahead. And that's one of the reasons that the Rocket is so inspiring as well, because it's all about journeying into unknown territory and exploring. And even at 39 years of being married, we still have so much to learn, and we're on an adventure together, and we want people's marriage to be their greatest adventure.
And can you share the formula in this book in maybe just a few sentences? Obviously, it's a whole book, but to kind of give a teaser for listeners.
Yeah,
Sure.
you know what? So the formula is STP. And, a lot of times formulas kind of get a bad rap of being gimmicky. But we look at it another way, that formulas help us to understand very complex things. Even something like water. You break it down, and what is it? H2O. There's a formula for that, right? And so what we've done is we've really put marriage under the microscope, looked at it through a biblical lens, and we found this formula, and we didn't make it up. It's actually out of Scripture. And it's the formula we believe that Jesus lived by. Jesus was selfless, truthful, and passionate. And it just becomes a really great structure and easily memorable for us to be able to live by.
And maybe can we give some practical steps? Like, how can they take the formula from this book, kind of apply it to their relationship, apply it to their marriage?
Well, everything in the book deals with a certain aspect of marriage. It might be about communication. It might be about laying down your own ideas and desires for the other person. We talk about priorities. That was a big thing for us. How to prioritize each other and marriage. I think that was one of the biggest lessons that we have learned. And
in terms of practicality, so we actually wear a bracelet that says STP on it, each of us, and this bracelet is a reminder every single day. And what's so fascinating about the formula, I think, is that when we look at our lives, what we still struggle with, I still struggle with being selfish. I still struggle with trying to hide things and not being as truthful as I should, or maybe a bit apathetic and not being as passionate as I should. It continues to be the challenge of married couples, and when I wear this bracelet, it reminds me every day, and then I catch myself go, oh, am I being selfless like Jesus, or am I being selfish in this moment? So it becomes very, very practical in the everyday decisions.
Mm-hmm. And so obviously this book, like you said, you touch on a bunch of different topics within marriage, but like relationships as a whole, marriage as a whole, isn't just like kind of a one size fits all. Like there's different things that work for different situations, different couples. So maybe can you touch on that and kind of how your book kind of explains that and tries to make it simple.
Mm-hmm. Well, this book really starts at the beginning of our marriage and to where we are today. But what we have found from our advanced readers who have all gone through the book already, they've spoken of, there's some that they've only been married 2 years, and they came back with the review of, oh my goodness, like this is helping me already. We haven't run out of a lot of fuel yet. We still have some spark, but it really is making a difference what we're learning through the book. We've had people that have been married as long as we have or even longer and have spoken of this book has meant so much to us, and we are taking stuff out of it for our adventure ahead. And then we've had some single people read the book, and they have said to us, and this was really a big surprise to us, that there were things in this book that really impacted them and that they were taking into their friendships, into their family relationships. What is in the book is just really practical for all individuals and unmarried couples.
I think that's just a really interesting point because, when you hear relationship, you might think whether it's some sort of romantic relationship, right? But we have so many relationships, friends, family, neighbors, coworkers, whoever that is. And, talking about communications, you have to communicate with everybody. You're going to need to make sure it's smooth. So, I love that. So this book isn't just for like romantic couples, you'd say?
Well, and it was written primarily for married couples or engaged dating couples. But no, we are finding that it really can benefit people at any age or stage in life.
Again, it's biblically rooted, and these are transferable principles, and it's within the context of marriage, but it really could apply to any relationship.
And maybe while you were writing this book, or even, like you said, just hearing feedback from it, is there any like myth on relationships, marriage that you've heard that you kind of debunked in the book?
Yeah, you know what? I think there's a number in there. One would be maybe that you have to find that soulmate, that one perfect person, that they're out there. And if you start getting into trouble, I must have married the wrong person. This must not be my soulmate. And we don't really believe that these marriage relationships that are really strong are necessarily just discovered. They're made. They're constructed. And that's what this book does, is it breaks down what are the elements to these very complex relationships called marriage. What are the essential elements? In fact, we call them the 30 dashboard essentials. And I kind of look at it this way, that if you were to fly a space shuttle, you'd have 1,400 gauges and switches to manage. If you were to pilot a cruise ship, you'd have 400. Well, when you're driving your car, you've got about 30 different gauges to keep your eyes on and different controls. And we broke marriage down to be those 30 gauges. So these are the 30 things that if you can remember to keep your eye on these things, and this book is actually book 1, and it deals with the first 18, and then it breaks it down to the 3 elements: selfless, truthful, passionate. If you can remember STP, if you can remember that formula, STP, selfless, truthful, passionate, and put your words, your motivations, your actions, your thoughts through that, it will do wonders in a person's marriage.
And let's say that there's a couple watching or listening to this right now, and they're just going through the motions. They're going through ups and downs, struggles. Would you say that like the formula is kind of too late, or where like how often can you apply this formula?
You know, I don't think it's ever too late for a couple, no matter what is going on currently and no matter how far gone they think they are. I think there's always hope. And that is what we wrote with, the motivation we wrote with was to give couples hope, because every couple struggles in one season or another of their lives. And sometimes people feel like, well, we're the only ones struggling. But the reality is, no, you're not the only one struggling. Everybody struggles at one point or another. And there are tools to be able to get through whatever situation you are going through.
Yeah. You know, and, although we call people to a grand adventure, make your marriage this grand adventure, what we write about are actually the microscopic things, the tone, the way you speak to one another, how you address one another in the first 11 seconds, just the really small things. So for that couple that's really struggling, we'd say it's not... Your solution is probably not in the grand gesture. It's probably in the little things. Just start paying attention to the little things, and that's what we're writing about.
And how has maybe even just like going through the writing process just strengthened like your own relationship with each other? Now you're like, oh, okay, maybe I could do this more. Like you were saying, oh, maybe I can be more selfless, or like how has that kind of, helped your own marriage?
Yeah, you know what? I think it's really benefited us in two ways. One, just writing this book. It's helped us come to a place of understanding that, oh yeah, like we are doing some of these things that we didn't have sort of a label for it before, but now it's brought that to life. And then secondly, it gives us a really, really good reminder of, yeah, are we living in this way? Do we operate with selflessness, with truthfulness, with passion? Because even now, at 39 years in, we can lose our way. We can run out of fuel. We can lose the spark. And we need to be intentional about really fueling our own marriage up.
And I'd love if I could just touch on that. Let's say if there's a couple watching or listening to this and you just said lose the spark, because so many, they're like, okay, like it was great at the start, then something happened and we're just like gone down, right? Like what would you say to them? What would you say as encouragement for that couple?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, you are not alone. It happens to everybody. It happens to us. And that's, again, why the rocket motif is so fun, because there's rockets that actually spring leaks and they lose their fuel. There's rockets that go off course and they drift. And so we're simply saying, hey, let's have a conversation about this. These signature fuel and spark questions, the book is loaded with them. And if you simply start having a conversation with one another, you will find these incremental little improvements every single day. Again, giving couples hope and letting couples know that you are not done yet. You can get back on track. You can begin to refuel again. You can begin to get that spark back again. It may take a lot of work. It might take a lot of time. But the big thing is that you are not the only couple experiencing this. Everybody experiences this, including us.
And how would you say that you guys like balance biblical truth with the practical advice for couples who they're not on the same level of faith?
Oh, yeah. Well, we actually addressed that a couple of times in the book. I think, I'll just tell a quick story. I went to get some bracelets laser printed, and there was a gentleman that I met for the first time, and he was of the Muslim faith, and he was very curious about what this book was about and what the bracelets were about, because he saw selfless, truthful, and passionate. And he said to me, boy, you know what, that's like Islam has that same value system. You should market this book for Muslims as well. And I said, well, you know what? This would probably be a good book for anybody, because we acknowledge that you don't need to be a person of faith. But these principles, we also don't shy away from the fact that these principles, every chapter, every principle is built on the Word of God. It is what we believe. We're not shoving it down your throat, but we invite you to explore these things. So we really think this is a great opportunity for people of any faith or no faith to maybe be exposed to the Word of God in a unique way.
And let's say we could rewind like 37, 38 years ago. You guys are newlyweds, okay? So what is there maybe one line of this book that you're like, wow, I wish I knew that or I thought that back then?
I think I'll give you an example a little bit later on than the newlywed stage. I'll give you an example of when, after we had our first child. And I was at home with our daughter Todd was really busy with youth ministry. The youth ministry he was leading at the time was just vibrant and exploding, and so many exciting things were happening there. And I was at home with our baby, and I really felt his heart drifting, and I felt like he was more excited to be with the youth than he was to be at home with me. And in the book, we tell about the story where he had this revelation moment where he realized his priorities were all mixed up and he needed to realign them. And I won't go into it any further. I'd like you to read it. But it was a defining moment in our lives, and it was actually brought through a book. He read this book that a fellow youth pastor gave him, and it helped to really shape and redefine our marriage.
That's one of the things we've realized is that books change lives. And so this is our humble attempt to put something out there that we hope will inspire somebody and maybe even transform some marriages.
And I'd love if you can both answer this as we just wrap it up. Like when a reader's done reading this book, what is one message that you hope that really sticks with them?
For me, I would say it would be the word intentionality, that as a couple, we are going to live our lives and do our marriage with greater intention. Intentionality, I think, is really key to making your marriage thrive. We can just sit back and do nothing, and it just kind of drifts along, and maybe it's fine. There's no big crisis, but you're not really thriving. And it's our hope that the intentionality will really speak to people.
And why do you think that there are so many couples that would kind of just be okay with that good enough? Like, it's like, okay, we've got everything we need. We got roof over our head. We got food. We got, like, our life is okay. It's good. Why do you think they're not kind of striving for more?
You know, I think for a couple reasons. One might be, I think a lot of us today are very distracted. We are very busy. We can't think of adding another thing to our lives. And if we think of, okay, so I've got my job, I've got my kids, I've got extracurricular activities, I've got my church, and I'm pouring so much of myself into that, I don't really have a lot of time to pour into my marriage. But when you do, it just makes so much difference, not only in your marriage, but it's going to make a difference in your parenting and the way you do your job, even in the way you serve at your church if you are a churchgoer. So I think it makes a difference all across the board. And one thing that we've really found, we've been empty nesters for the last 5 years. And because we had put so much intentionality into our marriage when our kids were still living at home, when they all left, we weren't really troubled or dismayed or like, okay, who are you? We were like, okay, now we're just continuing on in the next part of our adventure.
And Todd, what about you? If there's one message that you hope a reader's going to take away, what's something you hope sticks?
Yeah, you know, if maybe not even a message as much as a sensation. I would love for couples to have a sensation of excitement for their marriage and, oh my goodness, we're going somewhere. We've got a next adventure. What's our next destination as a couple? If they could have that sensation of a little bit of excitement, a little bit of motivation, maybe a little bit more selfless, a little bit more truthful, a little bit more passionate, I would love to see that. So it's not necessarily an intellectual knowledge lesson as much as an experiential experience.
And talking about that excitement and kind of things to come, you did mention a few minutes ago that this is book 1. So can we be on the lookout for book 2 anytime soon?
Well, yeah, so really quick, we've actually got 2 other small books, helpful books. One's called the Relationship Rocket 7-Day Challenge and the Relationship Rocket 7-Day Detox. Those are smaller books that are kind of more workbook devotional style that we're working on right now. And then in about a year and a half, we hope to start writing the part 2 of this book.
So stay tuned for that. And that'll be a really exciting time, guys. Where can we get the Relationship Rocket formula?
Yeah, so you can get it at Hall's Bookstore here in Manitoba. You can get it at Riverwood Church or on Amazon.
All right. Well, thank you both for sharing your wisdom, sharing your knowledge, and we're excited to see what God's going to do with this book.
Thank you so much for having us.